it's Alexi Uzas here from Exile. In this video, I'm going to take you through the difference between a producer and an executive producer. And I'm going to answer the question of who's actually boss on the feature film. Okay, so first up, let's run through the definition of an executive producer. So an executive producer is someone that is directly or indirectly involved in the financing of the film. So what does that actually mean? Well, if a EP, so I'm going to refer to an executive producer as an EP in this video for short. So if an EP is directly involved in the financing of the film, it means that they're putting in hard cash into the project. So they're investing their money into the film. So examples of EPs are usually high net worth individuals, private investors that are putting in cash into the project. When an EP is indirectly investing in a film, it usually means that they're putting in, so they're contributing to the finance of the film, but not necessarily through hard at-risk cash. So examples of this could be a post-production company who's investing a portion of their fees into the project. Another example might be a distributor who's putting up an advance against the project, but of course is going to recoup that advance ahead of all other investors. So they're the two types of direct and indirect financial contributions that can happen in a project. And when that happens, usually someone involved in that will receive an EP credit. The final example is a financier that's involved in cash flowing the debt element of the project. So if there's a tax rebate or a tax credit involved in the financing of the film, sometimes the people behind that finance company may also take an EP credit. Now, an EP credit usually isn't given to someone who is just basically finding those people, finding those EPs. So if someone goes out and finds a financier for a project, whether it's a private investor or a distributor, usually they'll take an associate producer credit, maybe a co-producer credit, but usually those EP credits are reserved for people who are really directly or indirectly contributing to the financing. Now, the thing with producing credits is they're very much discretionary. So there's no hard and fast rules about this. They're all kind of just industry norms and guides. But at the end of the day, a producer can give any type of producer credit to any person or individual that they like. Now, just finally, it's important to note that producer credits do go to individuals and not companies. So if there's a distribution company that's putting up an advance, it will usually be people that are involved in that company that get those credits. So that's an explanation of EPs. Now, what do producers do? Well, producers are essentially responsible for the entire production of the film from start to finish. And what that means is that they're responsible for finding the project, raising the finance, managing the production, seeing the delivery through to the distribution partners, assisting with the marketing of the film. So really they're involved in all aspects of the production. And there are some distinguishing features between an EP and a producer. So first one is the producer's usually out there trying to find EPs, not the other way around, right? So the producer's trying to find many different types of EPs that can contribute to the financing of their film. The other important distinguishing factors are the following. Number one, EPs don't really carry any liability. So if something goes incredibly wrong on the production, an EP is usually shielded from that liability. Now, of course, in litigation, a litigator will try and bring everyone they can into the project, but it's going to be harder for them to prove a cause of action against an EP than a producer. So there's less, if any, liability involved with being an EP. On the other side, the producer has all the responsibility, all the liability. So if there is a major issue during production, the buck stops with them, and so they are responsible. The other distinguishing factors are EPs usually don't own any copyright of the film. Now, usually, right, there is some cases where they may own or they may own a very small percentage of copyright. And sometimes that actually relates to just them having the ability to write down their investment when it comes to tax time. But usually they're not really holding any substantial copyright on the film. The producer, on the other hand, owns the project, owns the copyright, owns the IP, and it's there for them to exploit. And so as a result of those things, the producer has the lion's share of the equity in the film and has a lion's share of the potential, upside in the film. The financiers on the other side they're having to share their upside with all the multiple financiers that are involved. And typically what happens in a film is the net profit is split 50-50 between producers and the financiers. So those financiers are sharing in that 50% all together, whereas the producers really retain that remaining 50%. And that makes sense because the producers are taking on far more responsibility and far more risk. So who is actually the boss? Well, there's a bit of nuance with this. So firstly, if there is a bond company involved in the project, that is going to alter the relationship between the producers and the EPs dramatically. So on low budget films, typically there's no bond company involved because the cost of engaging a bond company relative to the budget often just means it doesn't make sense. Finance is limited, so to add a fee in there for a bond isn't always possible financially. And also, in order to get a bond, a lot of the manner in which the film is being produced and the budget is being put together often means that actually you probably couldn't even get a bond. Now, if you don't know what a bond is, a bond, or it's also referred to as a completion guarantee, is a company that will basically come in and underwrite the project and will underwrite that it will be delivered on schedule and on budget to the key stakeholders, the key financiers. So on a low budget film, typically there won't be a bond company. And so that means that really the producer is the boss and the EPs have limited control over the project. Often they have no creative control, and then their financial rights are somewhat limited to their investment agreement, which often is really, again, limited to them simply having a right to recoup their investment at a premium and a right to future royalties. If there is a bond company engaged in the project, then the producer is still the boss up until a point. So if there is any major issue in the production that could take it off budget or off schedule, then that means that the bond company can step in at that time and actually take over the project because it's acting in the interests of the financiers to ensure it's delivered on budget and on schedule. So if that's not the case, the bond company can actually step in and can move aside the producer and take over the project on behalf of the financiers. So where there's a bond company involved, usually the producer is involved, is the boss, up until the point of any major issues, at which point the financiers through the bond company are actually the boss. Now, where does this leave a filmmaker and any creative control? So if you're a director working with a producer and there are EPs involved who are putting up money and they're private investors, you might be concerned that they're going to have some sort of creative input. I can tell you from experience that private investors have limited, they have no creative input on any of the projects that I've been involved in, and that's really an industry norm. Now, where you might see financiers, so distribution companies or companies that are putting in large amounts of equity, where they might take some level of creative control, is where they're putting up a substantial amount of the finance. And that would really be up around 30 or 40% of the total finance. So at that point, they may be able to influence the creative approach or the creative intent or even any final creative decision making. And the obvious example of this is North American distribution companies. So those companies that are putting up really big advances for those rights, they might be able to have some creative control, particularly, in the post-production phase. So that's the end of this video. That gives you hopefully a really clear understanding of the difference between EPs and producers, what their roles and responsibilities are, how they're distinguished, and ultimately who is boss. So if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to be notified when we post a video. And if you have any follow-up questions about this video, or if you would like to see any particular content on this channel, please leave some comments in the comments section below. And if you're interested in working with us at Exile to help you finance and produce your films, head to the free training in the description below. You'll be able to learn a bit more about what we do, how we work, and you'll be able to book a call to speak with either me or a member of my team. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one.